Welcome to another episode of AgilityCast. I'm Alpha Bohaila with product marketing for CAPPM, and with me is my good friend Rick Morris from R Square Consulting.
Hey,
today, hi Rick. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, or popular topic, I would say. It's around Agile, and it's about scaling Agile. And for a long time now, we've talked about this. And sure, it's easy to get a group of young developers to behave and do the ceremonies the way you should. But an entire company, 5, 10, 50,000 employees, even if a business unit of a few hundred people, this could be quite a challenge. So Rick here has been out on the road a lot and talked to customers. And he's himself a bit of an expert. But he has learned a lot from talking to people that have to suffer here. You have to go through this growing pain. But let's start with a short encapsulation of what is really scaling Agile. What does that mean?
So to me, it's the blending of content and context, right? So I believe that Agile is really great at forming content, and in small teams, that's phenomenal. But then you still have to get to the context of the situation. Executives still need to know how much it's going to cost. They need to know how long things are going to take. They need to know when they can make commitments to the board or their customers. And that's where scaling Agile is really starting to meet the rub. What we're seeing in the industry right now is a ton of Agilists that are billing themselves as transformational people, but they've never done anything beyond the team. So as soon as the challenges of the business and the questions start coming from top down, they don't know how to answer them. And so that's where scaling Agile is really, I'm getting more and more phone calls every day because the Agilists didn't have basically the strength or didn't have the experience in how to roll this out into a larger environment. So they're phenomenal in teams. They work great in teams. But the moment you get beyond that bubble, they don't really know what to do.
Yeah. When you talk to companies, big, small, is it the same problems everywhere, or are there unique situations for each company?
They're pretty much the same problems, but the problems are generated because of the uniqueness of the company. So essentially what's happening is everybody's thinking that Agile is a prescriptive model, and it's not. And so what's happening is they're trying to force their business into certain ceremonies, and they don't understand the value of the ceremonies. And so that they just keep trying and failing versus questioning the ceremony in and of itself. Just because a ceremony is there doesn't mean it has to be followed that way. And just because your business is a little bit different doesn't mean you have to change your business to fit the Agile methodology. You fit the Agile methodology to the business so that they can move quicker and make decisions better.
That is interesting. Even though I'm in marketing, we use these sprints. We have 3 stand-ups every week. But they are not traditional stand-ups. They're not the stand-up you would see software developer do. They work for us. We have bent the ceremonies to fit into our very multi-dimensional marketing group. And it took a while to get it right, but with the help of Scrum Master and so on. And now it's working perfectly. Now we would never do it any other way than using these type of hybrid, if you will, stand-up. So it's interesting not to do what you're told, but do what you need to do, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And I think that's the biggest issue is if you look at the organizational landscape by Deloitte, and we'll put that up there for you guys to see, you'll see that Agile really has a tremendous amount. I mean, it's all over the map. I mean, this looks like a subway map from space. The point is that you can pick and choose different ceremonies from different methodologies that are going to fit the business. But the fact is really the whole point of Agile is just shortening the horizon, right? Instead of doing a project, looking at one project over the 24 months, we're taking the entire body of work and looking at it for the next 3 months. But we still have to have the context of the next year and the next 18 months and everything else in the picture. And that's where the true Agilists are really starting to fall down, and we're starting to see that in the market.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is a big topic, and it constantly comes up. So what would you suggest people do? Any easy tips and tricks, somewhere to start?
Yeah, it starts with surveying the team. Find out what works, what doesn't work. Have a retrospective of your retrospective, and don't force a ceremony if you don't find a fit. And don't force a language just because this Agile methodology uses this term. Just like you were saying with marketing, most of Agile was driven towards software development, but lean thinking can be applied anywhere. So what we have to do is find the right language where everybody understands and knows what we're trying to do without forcing a methodology, which is exactly what project management was being blamed for, which was doing documentation and ceremonies that didn't provide value, right? That's the rise of Agile, but you got to make sure everything you're doing is providing value, or don't do it. It's okay.
Yeah, and you can also rename them. You don't have to call it Scrum of Scrums, because it's a little bit too much Dr. Seuss in that one.
I agree. Or make me feel safe. Okay. I feel safe.
That's good. We will talk more about this as we move forward. And Rick, you always have good insight for talking to customers. But for now, we're going to turn to Rick's Corner. We'll talk about apps and books and other fun stuff.
So the book I want to bring up today is Shirzad Charmain's Positive Intelligence. It's one of the things that has really influenced me over the last couple of years, and it's still a fantastic read. But it talks about the battle that goes on in your brain, whether you're having positive thoughts or negative thoughts. And most of the negativity and negative thoughts are being self-generated. And so being able to identify that and learning how to have some techniques to get out of your negative into your positive allows people to be truly creative. And that's where innovation occurs. So if you're having that struggle, and right now some people are like, I don't have time to read that book, or I don't want to read that book. That's that negative judge that's already getting into you. So it's learning how to really turn off those different judges in our brain and learning how to be creative. Even at times it can be really difficult. So it's a phenomenal read.
What's it called again?
Positive Intelligence.
I will look into it. Well, I have some final thoughts around some findings we have collected in a recent PPM maturity survey. We did hundreds of respondents from all over the world in the PMO, outside of the PMO. Very insightful. You will get the full report sometimes in October. I want to give you a little tidbit of what we found. And first of all is we are alarmingly low on the maturity level, most of us. And even when we self-evaluate ourselves, we tend to lift the level a little bit above the truth. And even with that, the level is quite low. So it's interesting how much there's to learn from this. Actually, less than 1% of all the respondents checked all the boxes that would mean that they are a fully mature organization. And I understand that that's hard. But there are small things in here that when you read the report, and you should almost take the survey yourself when you read it and ask where you stand. If you're an Agile organization, then how come almost 60% of respondents said that most of their projects run for more than a year? You got to start to think about splitting these things up in sprints, in shorter intervals, and stop working on the long waterfall horizons, right? And when you're looking at positive sides, that's shifting now, is that we've noticed a big trend of the PMO not losing its power, but rather distributing it. And so these groups are now starting to do their own projects, where the PMO has tentacles in them, but rather than centralize the project from the PMO, each business units are now starting to do their own projects, and they're starting to do it, as you talk about, Rick, more the way they want it. They want to introduce Agile. They want to introduce Agile their way. They want to have the horizons of their timelines and so on differently from many other aspects of the organization. And I think that's going to lead to the beginning of a more Agile product management approach. You need to bring it in-house. By that, I mean bring it within the business unit, or at least within the team. And that's a first step. So there will be more to come in October from the survey. And hopefully there's a report that will come with it as well, and webcasts, and a whole lot of information that you can then turn into education for your organization. And Rick, you have an exciting event coming up with PM.com, right?
I do. And in fact, that report's going to be released on projectmanagement.com, which CA is a huge sponsor of, and we appreciate that because it's about sharing knowledge and really building a community. And I think projectmanagement.com has done a phenomenal job of that. And in fact, they're hosting an organizational agility conference on September 12th. It's free. There's about 30,000 people already signed up to join us. The great Colin Ellis, who's going to be on the show with us in the future. Erica Flora is going to be on it. It's a phenomenal event. I'm the host, so we hope to see you there.
And I, of course, have to sell CA World. The doors are open for registration right now. We'll be in Miami Beach in November 13th or 15th. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be a great event. And with that, I want to thank you all for coming. Stay safe. Have fun. Bye-bye.